So, what exactly happens when a simple WhatsApp message gets tied to a murder? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive deep into the Bombay High Court's decision in Yusuf Khan versus the state of Maharashtra. This case is fascinating because it sits right at that critical intersection of digital communication and criminal conspiracy. And it all ends with a bail rejection under the incredibly stringent Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. You know it as the UAPA.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at the central question about the bail itself. Then, we'll trace the timeline of the allegations, just as the prosecution laid it out. After that, we absolutely have to talk about the UAPA bail standard. It's a very high bar. From there, we'll see how the court actually connected a message to a conspiracy, which brings us to the final holding.
You know, this is a question that our courts are having to grapple with more and more. And this case right here, from the Bombay High Court, it really gets into that murky legal territory. It sets a precedent that has some pretty profound implications for how our actions online, in the digital world, can have very real-world criminal consequences. So the core issue, the main thing before the High Court, was pretty straightforward. Should the appellant, a veterinary doctor named Yusuf Khan, be granted bail in a murder case, a case that the prosecution claims was sparked by an instigating message he's accused of circulating on WhatsApp? Let's get the key players and facts straight. The case really boils down to these essentials. You've got the appellant, Yusuf Khan, and the deceased, Umesh Kolhe, and they were actually part of the same professional community. The core accusation is just so incredibly modern, instigating a murder through a WhatsApp message. And the charges, well, they are severe, coming under both the Indian Penal Code and the UAPA. All right, to really get a grip on the court's reasoning, we have to look at the sequence of events. Let's walk through how the National Investigation Agency, the NIA, laid it all out. This timeline is basically the prosecution's entire story in 5 key steps. It starts simply enough with a post by the deceased, but then the prosecution alleges a series of very deliberate actions by the appellant. He didn't just share something, right? He allegedly took a screenshot, altered the contact number, and added his own inflammatory message before sending it out. Then comes a critical link, 25 phone calls with a co-accused. All of this, the prosecution says, leads to that final tragic event, the murder of Umesh Kolhe. Now, this next part is absolutely crucial. You just can't understand the court's decision without understanding the specific legal framework it was using. See, this was not a standard bail hearing. The charges under the UAPA, an act really designed to fight terrorism and threats to the nation, they bring in a much, much tougher legal test for granting bail. So here's the key takeaway. For UAPA case, to deny bail, the court doesn't need to be convinced of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Not at all. The bar is way lower. The court just has to look at the prosecution's evidence and ask, are there reasonable grounds to believe the accusation is prima facie true? Just true on the face of it. That's a huge difference. And the other major legal tool the court used was Section 14 of the Evidence Act. Now, what this does is it allows the judges to look beyond just the physical act of sending a message. It lets them try to infer the appellant's state of mind, his intention, his knowledge, and in this case, his alleged ill will toward the person who was killed. Okay, so this brings us right to the heart of the High Court's analysis. This is where we see how the judges took those legal principles, the UAPA standard and the Evidence Act, and applied them to build their case for conspiracy against Yusuf Khan. The court's reasoning was very methodical. Step 1, it wasn't just a forward, it was an intentional alteration designed to instigate. Step 2, the circulation wasn't random, it was targeted. Step 3, those 25 phone calls, the court didn't see that as a coincidence, but as pretty strong evidence of coordination. And finally, and this is a really powerful inference, the court believed the appellant deliberately kept his distance right before the murder, interpreting it as a shrewd move to avoid being directly implicated. Wow! I mean, this quote from the judgment, it's incredibly telling, isn't it? It just perfectly captures the court's entire view of the appellant's role. The words shrewdly and quietly active behind the curtain, they paint a picture not of some passive bystander, but of a calculated instigator who, in the court's view, lit the fuse and then just stepped back into the shadows. So with that whole chain of reasoning in place, we finally get to the court's ultimate conclusion on Yusuf Khan's appeal for bail. And the High Court's decision was unambiguous. It found that the NIA had, in fact, established a prima facie case. This means that based on all the material presented, there were reasonable grounds to believe the accusation of conspiracy was true.
And because of that, under the high threshold of the UAPA, the appeal was dismissed. The lower court's decision to deny bail was upheld.
So, at the end of the day, this case leaves us with a critical and, honestly, a pretty heavy question that goes way beyond this one appeal. By finding that a series of digital actions can form the basis of a prima facie case for a murder conspiracy, the court has drawn a very, very sharp line. And it really forces all of us to think about the profound legal responsibility that now comes with everything we do and say in our digital lives.